All right. So because a lot of folks are going to be muted and there are a lot of you, another thing we'd like to say is that if you would like to say something, if you feel like you need to ask a question or interrupt, feel free to raise your hand and a moderator will call on you.
Y varios de nosotros vamos a estar en silencio, la mayoría. Si necesitan hacer un comentario, levanten su mano y el moderador les va a dar acceso para que hablen.
So like Joe is a moderator tonight, so Joe will be looking out for raised hands.
Joe va a ser la moderadora esta noche y ella va a estar checando si tiene la mano levantada.
All right, so I am going to first go over our agenda for tonight. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys so you can see what we're going to do.
Lo primero que vamos a hacer es ver la agenda de esta noche y la voy a compartir con ustedes para que sepan qué es lo que vamos a hacer.
All right. Oh. Hold on one second. Zoom wanted me to let somebody else in the meeting and wouldn't let me.
Hay otra persona que va a entrar a la conversación.
Okay. All right, so you should be able to see the agenda up on the screen.
Van a poder ver la agenda en la pantalla.
So tonight we have some guest speakers. We have some folks joining us tonight.
Esta noche tenemos unos invitados, unas personas que se van a unir a nuestra sesión.
Tonight the big topic is to talk about what we can do on Block 12, which is up at the entrance to the neighborhood.
El tema de esta noche va a ser qué podemos hacer en el bloque 12, que está a la entrada de nuestro vecindario en Old Lynchburg.
Blueprint is here, so Ross, who is our guest speaker, is going to present some of that information to you guys.
El personal de Blueprint se encuentra con nosotros y Ross es la persona que va a hacer la presentación.
We're going to break them into small groups so you guys can have some conversation.
Después los vamos a separar en pequeños grupos para que tengan una conversación.
And then we're going to join back together and share our ideas with the larger group.
Y luego nos vamos a unir con el grupo para compartir nuestras ideas.
So one of the big things, so the two big features we're trying out tonight.
Los dos temas de los que vamos a estar hablando esta noche.
We're going to try interpretation in a different way than we did last week.
Vamos a tratar la interpretación en una forma diferente a la que hicimos la semana pasada.
So you know right now I'm speaking and then I wait and Marta translates whatever I just said.
En este momento yo hablo y luego Marta traduce lo que yo acabo de decir.
And that's consecutive translation, one right after the other.
Y esa es traducción consecutiva, uno después del otro.
Zoom has a feature to do interpretation in the same moment.
Y Zoom tiene la facilidad de que se haga la interpretación instantáneamente.
So this is going to take a little bit of technology on our part, but we're going to walk through how to do this right now and see how it works and give it a shot so that the meeting can move a little bit faster.
Y yo sé que esto va a traer un poco de tecnología, pero vamos a tratarlo para que nuestra sesión vaya más rápido.
All right, so I'll go back to my presentation because I took a couple screenshots of how
Voy a
this
mi
works.
presentación nuevamente para decirles cómo funciona esto.
So if you are on a computer,
Si ustedes están en una computadora,
you will see down at the very bottom of your screen where there's the microphone and the camera icon.
en la parte inferior de la pantalla donde está el micrófono y la cámara.
Oh, actually, you know what, Marta? I remember now. Molly needs to be translating for me.
Ah, ok. Molly ahora.
So Molly needs to be translating because I'm going to turn on interpretation so that this feature is available.
Va a aprender la interpretación para que sea accesible.
And once I start interpretation, if you aren't on the language channel, you won't be able to hear Marta or David, who are our translators tonight.
Y si cuando empezamos la interpretación, si no seleccione uno o el otro, no va a poder escuchar lo que está diciendo la primera persona.
So down at the bottom of your screen, if you are on a computer, you should see a little button that looks kind of like a globe.
So, si está viendo en su computadora, debes de ver un dibujo así, se ve como un mundo pequeño.
And that button will allow you to select to hear either English or Spanish translation.
Y esa opción le va a permitir elegir entre el inglés o el español.
So much of tonight is going to be in English.
La mayoría de la presentación hoy va a ser en inglés.
So if you would like to hear it in Spanish, go ahead now if you're on a computer, find this button and select Spanish and see if you can hear Marta. So Marta is going to try to speak to you. So go ahead and pick that.
Así es que si necesitas escuchar la traducción en español, vaya en su pantalla a buscar esta opción, seleccione la opción de español y vamos a probar si pueden escuchar a Marta que está haciendo la traducción en español ahora.
All right, so I'll give you a second to try that. Are people on computers clicking that button? Raise your hand if it's working for you.
So, si puedes levantar la mano si está funcionando para usted escuchar en español lo que está diciendo Marta.
Okay, so it looks like it's working for some folks. So it's a little bit different if you're on your phone. I'll show you what that looks like.
Es un poco diferente si está usando su teléfono. Ahora vamos a enseñarles cómo se ve en su teléfono.
So on your phone, there's this little area down here with 3 buttons that might say more or más if it's in Spanish.
En la pantalla de su teléfono hay unos 3 puntitos que puedes decir encima more o más en español.
So if you touch the screen, these options should come up.
Si toques ahí en la pantalla, esas opciones aparezcan.
And then you'll see an option here to interpret languages, interpretación de idiomas.
Y aquí vas a ver la opción de interpretación de idiomas.
If you select that, the next thing you'll see is the option to click Spanish.
Si selecciona esa opción, la próxima pantalla le da la opción de elegir español.
Then you can say, okay, or listo.
Y puedes poner okay o listo.
And that should get you translation. And now you should also be able to hear Marta when she speaks.
Así es que deben de poder escuchar a Marta ahora.
So can folks raise their hands? So, all right, it looks like it's mostly working.
Yes, I hear you.
Great, Ashley can hear. So if you are trying to get Spanish language and you cannot hear Marta, go ahead and say something. Raise your hand if you cannot hear Marta right now and you're trying. Wanda, you can't hear Marta?
Escucha o levanta la mano si quieres escuchar a la traducción y no escuchas a Marta ahora.
I'm sorry.
Wanda, don't apologize. Did you find that little icon, Wanda? Did you click Spanish? Ah, okay. Click Spanish and you're good. Okay, cool. So it sounds like it's working. Are people hearing the Spanish that need to be getting the Spanish language? Amazing. This is really exciting. You also might be hearing in the background my children screaming because they have just returned home. So welcome to my world. I don't know who's, I think that's the 10-month-old that's upset right now. I don't think it's the big one. Okay, so we've gone over the agenda. It looks like translation is working, so this is great. If you are having trouble, the phone number to call is 202-0805. I am going to put that in the chat right now. So if you end up getting disconnected or having trouble, go ahead and call that number in order to get things up and running again. Does everyone see that number? All right. Well, now I'm going to move on to the actual conversation for tonight. So I'll share my screen again. Oh, Jo is raising her hand.
During the presentation, if Marta needs you to slow down, she'll make a sign, and then I will hold this up. So if you're presenting tonight and you start going very quickly, Marta will give a sign and you'll see this. And if you're the presenter, please slow down a little bit so the interpreter can catch up. Thank you.
Yeah, if you see your interpreter going like this, that means slow down. You've gone too fast, can't keep up. All right. Let's go back to the presentation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I just want to spend a second making sure we all know the area that I'm talking about tonight, or that we're all talking about tonight. So this is a map of Southwood that you may all recognize. We look at it pretty often. This, normally, we're right here in the world, in our office trailer. Right now, we're all over the place, wherever we are. This road coming all the way through is Hickory Street. That's the main road that goes all the way through Southwood. Old Lynchburg Road is out here on the outside, and this nice big section in here that is all in green and colored in is phase 1. And so tonight, we are going to be focused on this block, block 12 of phase 1. It is up here near the entrance. So if you're in Southwood now and you're going along Hickory Street and you're exiting out the back, you get to the top of the hill and there are 2 trailers on either side, and then there are woods. That woods on the right-hand side is block 12. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. It's a pretty good distance away from this area down here, which is Village 1. So a lot of you who have been doing the designing of this first neighborhood that we're going to have, where we're going to build houses for rent and for ownership, for all sorts of different price points, for affordable, deeply affordable, all the way up to market rate. That is all happening down here in this section. So once you come in and you pass block 12, you would come down this new road before you got into this first neighborhood that we've been designing. So we are focused right now and tonight on this area in general. Many of you who've been doing the planning with us probably remember multiple meetings that we have had where we have discussed the option of developing that block as affordable rental apartments. These in front of us are some of the drawings that Bruce and Whitney and the architects produced for this idea of doing 80 affordable rentals on this block. We had a couple of challenges come up with our application to be able to get funding to build those apartments. And so we are on hold for that application. We are waiting until next year to make that application. While we wait, we are continuing to talk about what we could do on the first floor of these buildings, because one of the really important ideas of Block 12 is how it is this downtown area, this neighborhood center for Southwood. And so for something to be a downtown or a center, it really needs to have something in it that people want to go to. And so this first floor needs to be developed in a way that there is something interesting and exciting that you and your families are going to want to go visit. And so even though we are on pause with looking at the 80 affordable units, we are still going to explore, and we are talking tonight to Blueprint about what we could do with that first floor to create this really exciting, vibrant downtown. So with that introduction, I will actually be handing things over to Ross from Blueprint so that he can walk us through what the folks at Blueprint, the ideas they have and the things that they're proposing for Block 12. So Ross, I'll hand it on to you. You just tell me when you'd like your slides to move forward.
Excellent. And Marta, I'll keep an eye on you and look for you to go like this if I'm talking too fast. Does that sound good? I met many of you a couple months ago at a community meeting, and it's great to be invited. Thank you to the Habitat team for inviting us to discuss this idea. I run a group called Blueprint, and we are a community investment organization that invests in projects across the country that have strong benefit for communities. And my colleagues, John and Megan, who are on the call, have been working with the Habitat team on one possible idea for Southwood that we have been discussing in the Charlottesville community for a while, and is built on ideas from other communities that have been successful across the country. And the goal of this conversation is to discuss a opportunity for Block 12 that is a nice place for you and your families to go, that can connect you with healthy food and good family-friendly places to be, that is a good opportunity for people who are entrepreneurs and business owners in Southwood to grow your business, and an opportunity for community members to have good jobs. In addition, this can help farmers in Central Virginia connect with business opportunities, and create healthier food and healthier community for everybody. So those are our goals. And we have some ideas based off of what many of you have told us, what people in the Charlottesville community have told us, and what we've seen be successful across the country. I do want to start by saying this is just an idea to react to. Anything that happens in Block 12 will only be successful if it's what the Southwood community wants. And so we present this to you as ideas for your feedback. If there are parts you like and parts you don't like, we're interested in feedback on both. If you like the general direction, that's great. If you don't like it at all, that's also great. This is mainly a session to put some specific ideas out there and get your feedback. Does that sound good? Okay, so I want to start on this slide and say the basic idea here is for a food port or a plaza de comida where we can bring together both entrepreneurs and businesses as well as Southwood residents in the Charlottesville community for what we hope will be a really special place and what will really be an anchor for the Southwood community. Next slide. What is the goal? As I said, we want your feedback on this idea. We're presenting some very specific slides for your feedback. We're interested in both what you like and what you don't like. It will take a long time for the right idea to come out, but so this is really the first step in a long process. And so I know from the last meeting that I attended that you are not shy with both what you like and what you don't like, and continue to not be shy. Next slide. So as Rush said, this is a specific idea for Block 12, which we hope can be a commercial center and a community heart for Southwood. So the idea that we're talking about, here's physically where it sits, and Rush did a good job highlighting it. What is a food port? It's three things. It's a store, it's a shared commercial kitchen, and it's a warehouse. Let's go to the next slide so we can go into detail on each of them. Part one, the store. Many places call this food halls. This would be a public space that would be open to Southwood residents and the community that would combine a few things in one. It would be essentially a grocery store where fresh local food, vegetables, meat could be sold. It would be affordable, it would be fresh, it would be local, it would be a way for you to buy food for your families at an affordable price. There would also be retail shops. There are places like, I live in Washington, D.C. Union Market is a store where Washington, D.C. food entrepreneurs have taco places, and there's ice cream, and there's coffee, and there's all kinds of different ethnic foods. There's examples from Atlanta to Salt Lake City to Denver of across the country of these food halls where if you have a business right now and you are interested in having a food truck or interested in running a catering company, or maybe you already do, this could be a retail space where you could cook food and sell products to the community. We've talked with probably 30 different food producers from across Charlottesville, people who do coffee and sausages and ice cream and different products who might be interested in having a space. The goal would be to have a space that you would want to go, that you would want to take your friends, that you would want to take your children. And it would be a place for, if you're an entrepreneur, to sell your product, or if you're a resident, it would be a nice place to spend an afternoon or an evening. That's the concept. That's part one. Next slide. So part two is a shared kitchen space for business owners to grow their businesses. There is an example of this in Richmond called Hatch. There are many examples of this across the country, but we know there are over 100 independent businesses in the Southwood community. And for example, in Hatch in Richmond, there are food entrepreneurs who make empanadas, who make ice cream sandwiches, who make pies and cookies and cakes, who make boxed lunches where they serve universities and hospitals. And so if the food store, the food hall is the front of the house, this is the back of house. So if you are interested in working for a food, beverage, hospitality businesses, or if you're running a business and you want commercial space, this would be a shared space for both you and for the Charlottesville community to either find a great job or grow your business that you're running. Next slide. Part three is a warehouse. We have a number of very good relationships with, for example, the Charlottesville Food Hub that provides local food to Charlottesville restaurants. There are groups that are growing food, whether it be vegetables or herbs. There are people who work in proteins, in chicken and pork and beef, who need cold refrigerated places to store their products before they sell it. There are a number of places across Charlottesville that want a central hub to store food. This would be a place that would provide good job opportunities to restaurants and also be a centralized place where the food community in Charlottesville can come together. So again, this would be a very good opportunity to bring fresh and good food to Southwood and to Charlottesville, and it would be a very important part of the food ecosystem in the Charlottesville community. It would also be a employer. It'd be a great place for quality jobs. So if the food hall is the community-facing part and the commercial kitchen is where food is turned into products, this is the very back of house where businesses and farmers can grow, produce, process, and store products. Everything we would do in the warehouse would be very respectful of the community. So for example, this isn't a slaughterhouse. We wouldn't be doing anything that would be unsafe or unattractive for community members. There would be we'd be very respectful about what went in here, that we were in the middle of a residential community. But this would be a very potentially very interesting business hub inside the Southwood Residence commercial village. Next slide. So what would our goals be? I've spoken to some of these, but number one, create jobs. Food and beverage and hospitality is 1 in 8 jobs in this country. And I know many of you are seeing this firsthand, but the coronavirus crisis is seeing both a very negative impact on the food, beverage, hospitality sectors, but also a real desire for people to invest and buy food in their local community. And so we hope over the next 2 to 3 years, and we expect that there will be a big opportunity for growth in local food. And again, that's 1 in 8 jobs in the country, and we want to create good quality jobs in Southwood for Southwood residents. And this is a very meaningful employer that is a very important part of the Charlottesville community. Number two, increase access to healthy, fresh, affordable food. Virginia has more family farms per capita than any other state in the United States. And at the same time, John knows this, I believe it's 12 cents of every dollar that's spent on food gets to the farmer. So in South Charlottesville, there's not great access to healthy, fresh, affordable food, and the farmers who are producing food don't make a lot of money. And so our hope is by providing a food port in the middle of Southwood, this very important community, farmers can get paid more, and you Southwood residents can get healthy, fresh, affordable food better than you currently can. The third goal is to support Southwood small businesses. So we know that there are over 100 businesses being run out of Southwood. Many are in food, in catering, in distribution, in logistics. And our hope is providing a commercial center to bring many of these together would help increase your business's success, increase your income, increase the number of people that you can hire and employ, and help Southwood be much more economically successful. And number four relates to number two. We want to give local farmers a better way to distribute their products. So there's been great interest in Charlottesville in local food. There's been great production in and around Charlottesville, but the number one need we hear from farmers is a central place to produce, distribute, process, and sell food. And so we're really, we didn't invent this. John and I have been working on this for 5 years, and we're really trying to respond to a greater regional community need. Next slide. So that is what we have been thinking. I want to reiterate, these are ideas from talking to hundreds of people in the greater Charlottesville community. We've worked with the University of Virginia, Piedmont Virginia Community College, a number of people who have been thinking intently about these ideas to give us feedback. And this presentation is what we've heard, but none of this matters until you share how you would see an idea like this fitting into your community. And again, I want to say, if there's a way for us to work together, and this is very exciting, that is fantastic. If you don't like it at all and it doesn't fit, that's very good for us to know. This is an idea for you to react to, and I will stop talking and hear what those reactions are. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share these ideas and see if there's an exciting way to work together.
Thank you, Ross. I am actually going to officially hand this meeting off to Molly briefly. What we're gonna do now is break into small groups. And Molly is going to explain that and divide us up into those small groups. So each group is going to take on a particular part of the program that Ross just explained. So one group is going to specifically think about the kitchen. One group is going to be asked questions about that warehouse space. One group is going to answer questions specific to the store or the retail space. So each group is going to have some community members, at least one of our staff to help facilitate. And we're going to go through a list of questions. I think we have about 15 minutes in those small groups to do that work. And then we'll come back together and report out. The staff member, Southwood staff member, is going to be responsible for the report out. I know we normally put that on a community member, so you're off the hook this week. You're welcome. But one of us will report out for our group. I was sort of vamping for Molly so she could set everything up. But Molly, do you have anything to add? Do you need more time?
I need one more second. And then I will, so it'll send you to your room to that sounded bad. It will automatically put you into your discussion group. And then when you have 1 minute left, it will give you a warning before it will kind of rudely like yank you back into the meeting. So be warned.
Yeah, there's no, we normally have those friendly little chimes, the bells that Molly strikes. Unfortunately, Zoom doesn't have a bells feature yet, but we'll write to them and make sure that they develop one for us.
For the Blueprint folks, because you're all English speakers, we only have one group who's English speaking. So you'll all be going into that group, but you will hear the report back from the other groups at the end. All right. Sorry, there's just a lot of names on here.
And while Molly is continuing to put that together, when she sends us all to our groups, you'll get a box, something will pop up on your screen asking you to join that group. So when you see that box pop up, make sure to hit join or okay or whatever it's asking you for so that you can go into your discussion group. We'll just patiently wait and not stress Molly out.
Okay, ready.
Hello. We must be the English speaking group tonight. Hey, Richard. Hey, Tiffany.
Hello.
Hey, Teresa. Hey, Rose. Hey, Sharika. I don't know if Sharika's still there, but she was.
Hey guys.
Hey, Joe. We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm guessing this is all of us. It looks like the full group. I don't think we're waiting on anyone else to join.
How many is that?
Let's see. We are. Oh, no, Wanda's coming. Hey,
I
Wanda.
didn't count Richard, but I think it's.
All right. So feel free to go ahead and unmute yourselves, or you can leave yourselves on mute, but I'm expecting you guys to speak up. So you can't stay on mute the whole time. So we are going to talk about the warehouse space. That is the theme that we have been assigned. So that was, if you remember, the kind of larger space where, in this case, farmers would be able to use the space for warehouse storage and distribution, and maybe some of the production or sort of packaging of their materials to be sent out to other retail locations in Charlottesville and maybe even outside of Charlottesville. I don't know if that's
tap on the top.
That's the plan. But so I have some questions. Before I start with my questions, do you guys have any just clarifying questions about what we're doing here tonight, what this whole conversation is about? Wanda's shaking her head. Teresa, you good? You're good. Okay. I can't hear you, Teresa, just so you know. If you want me to hear you, you'll have to push the microphone button. I can see Rose's thumb, so I'm taking that as a yes. She's good. Teresa, that was you turned off your video though.
Joanne.
Oh. Hey, Joanne, can you hear us? Well, she's here. All right, so let's get started on some questions. We only have 15 minutes, and I'll be taking notes so that I can share with the bigger group what our questions or thoughts are. We also have some of the Blueprint folks in our meeting groups. We've got Megan, Ross, John, all joining us. So particularly if you just have questions for them about their organization, I think you're also welcome to ask any of those, since we have that audience with us. So my first question to kick this off, so how do you guys feel, or what do you guys think about this idea that they said of bringing this warehouse space could also mean bringing new jobs to Southwood? What does that sound like to you? Wanda, what do you think about more jobs coming to Southwood?
Thank you, Rush.
I'm gonna call on people if they don't. Don't worry, Richard, you're next.
I mean, it's great, but it's just, we just have to see to believe,
What does that mean?
We just have to wait. I mean, there's a lot of people here,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll be great for people that, don't have transportation.
Mm-hmm.
They're local. They could, easily go from work to picking up their kids quick,
Mm-hmm.
boys and girls. So it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you.
I want to get things started, break the ice a little bit. Everybody's being so quiet. What do you guys think? What kinds of jobs do you feel like people want to see in Southwood? What's the kind of work people want?
One with a living wage.
Living wage.
No need to have a job if you can't afford to live.
Yeah. What does a living wage mean to you, Richard?
Not struggling to put food and have a home.
Mm-hmm.
Living wage right now in Charlottesville is like $17, $18. That's the rent of one bedroom apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at, I don't know, take care of a family out here in Southwood, $20+ an hour.
Mm-hmm. Particularly if you've got one wage, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's people making less than that.
Oh yeah,
Correct.
right now, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You can have a job, but if you're struggling, come on. You gotta make it where the people that are going to work there aren't struggling like they are now.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's a good condition, Richard, right? Like it's like bringing 100 jobs doesn't mean much if those jobs are paying minimum wage.
Correct.
I hear that.
What Regal's doing?
Sharika, did you want to add something?
Well, it can be minimum wage as long as the income level is above what the rental level is for the residents in Southwood.
So you're saying if minimum wage means that somebody can afford to live in Southwood, that might be okay?
I mean, if there's a place out there where they can afford to live in Southwood and be able to put food on the table, but they don't have to have the minimal wage. You know what I'm saying? They can have minimum wage or maybe a little bit. They don't have to have $20, $25 an hour. If they had enough that they could pay their rent, maybe pay their cell phone bill, their electric bill, their water bill, and the subsidized housing for Southwood has to equal what the job you are paying here in that warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So it sounds like making sure that the pay at the warehouse equals being comfortable, kind of what Rose and what Tiffany are saying, that you're not struggling is really important. What do you think about the type of work that people would want to do? Like this warehouse work, I imagine, you know, it's what kind of work do you think that would be? And do you feel like there are people in Southwood that would be looking for that kind of job?
Well, who's going to be responsible for this warehouse anyway?
Who would own and operate the warehouse?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Ross, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mentioned that there are two different ways we think about it. There is a group, as I mentioned, in Richmond called Hatch, that is a local food incubator, and they run a warehouse in Richmond. And we would look to engage a similar, maybe Hatch or maybe a similar like-minded group that would run it, or that would run a piece of it that would be shared. So let's say you're a Southwood resident and you have a catering business and you want a small amount of storage space for your food that you buy in bulk. You would work with a property manager like Hatch on your own business. And then we've also been talking with a number of different companies, like 4P Foods is the food distribution company that I mentioned, that is one of the largest local food distributors in the region, or the Charlottesville local food hub. They would have much larger space. So the warehouse would actually be much like apartments, or the warehouse would be sectioned out into 4P Foods gets 5,000 square feet, and JM Stock, which is a protein producer, gets 10,000 feet. And the jobs would actually be working for the companies that would rent subsets of the warehouse. So you as a Southwood resident could potentially have your own space, or you could work for a company that was occupying space.
If I could just add to that, Ross and Rush, I think the way to think of it is the warehouse is really a receiving center for raw goods that will be coming in, whether it's produce or protein, or in some cases finished goods like honey, cheese, those types of goods. They come in. They are, in some cases, if it's raw vegetables that are coming off the farms that are overseen by the local food hub, it gets processed, packaged, and stored. And then in many cases, it gets put onto the trucks that are managed by 4P Foods and gets delivered to the community. So there would be jobs such as working on cleaning, packaging, processing the food, managing the warehouse space, as Ross said, working in a butchery, driving trucks, making delivery. Those are all the types of jobs that would be involved in this. Really think of it as a food. It's just a kind of the middle link between the farmer and the ultimate consumer.
Thanks, John. Richard, did you have a question?
Yeah, since we're talking about warehouse, I've worked in warehouses before that were open 24 hours a day. Would we have a deadline for closure? Because you talked about living units also above that. That would be kind of disturbing for nighttime with trucks coming in and out.
What's your recommendation, Richard? What do you think is a good fit for the neighborhood that we're designing?
I don't think anything maybe after 8 or 9 o'clock should be allowed in.
Just to keep kind of time with the residential neighborhood.
Correct, because there will be kids living there that will have to go to school with, you can't disturb them.
Got it.
Rush, could I ask one question, clarifying based on what Richard just said?
Sure.
He mentioned that there would be people living above it. Is that the current configuration is that part of the conversation, or?
That's a possibility. It's not necessarily exactly what Blueprint had brought in this current design, but when we've talked about that, because that was originally the idea for Block 12, was that it would have commercial on the first floor and then people living above. that's something we could look at doing here, just like we were in the past. And so I think it's an option, and it's a question of, is that important? Is that something we really want to see as a community?
Well, see, I thought with the picture that you showed was the previous ones. So that's why I thought you were still planning on with the living quarters.
Yeah, that was the PHA design where it had the 80 units, and then on top, and there were the units that were on top of the commercial.
Correct.
Right. That was original. And Rose, you had your hand raised a
So
little
is
bit.
is that not currently in the design, or is that something that's off the table? Because I thought we had to wait another year before Sunshine and them decided on what they were gonna do.
That's a great question. We only have 60 seconds, so I'm going to answer it as quickly as I can, which is to say we do have, we are going to apply again next year, assuming that we don't come up with something we're even more excited about between now and then. The agreement that we have with the county allows for us to go back and ask for permission to do something other than those 80 units. If we say this is something we want to do that hits all these other markers, like creates jobs, like they were talking about, brings something great to the community, creates that downtown. So we have an out kind of in the contract if that's something we want to pursue. But if we still want to see residential, that is something we can talk about with Blueprint now.
Okay. All right. Okay, I just thought it was we had to hold off and wait until
for another year.
For another year before that was.
Hola. So harsh every time.
I know it's we're always in the middle of a sentence when it happens.
I know.
So sad.
Molly, I think that if people want to go back to, I think people have to reselect the interpretation.
Okay.
I think it stopped it.
Deben de seleccionar otra vez la interpretación si quiere escucharlo en español, porque ya paró de asignarlo automáticamente.
Sí.
Okay, so it looks like people can hear Marta. Good. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Sorry about the abrupt removal from conversation. I know it cut us off mid-sentence, so it might have done the same to some of you guys, but maybe that's just a signal that we were having really good discussion, so that's good. All right, so I am just gonna go ahead and pick a group to start their share out. So why don't we start with the retail space group, the store group.
That's David and I's?
Is that what you talked about, Jordan?
I think so. The food hall store space. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. David, do you want to share or do you want me to do it? You have notes. Okay. So basically we talked about like where people shop right now. And it's a lot of the same places that overlap, like Sam's, Walmart, Wegmans, Food Lion, kind of a mixture. We talked about what interest people have in having those things in our space. And it sounded like when people listed what they were interested in having in the space was more like coffee, or fresh vegetables, or fresh fruit, juice, fresh tortillas, someone said. And they think that definitely there are people in the neighborhood who would like to have space there. It would depend. They'd like to have both larger spaces and smaller kind of like stall spaces. Sorry, Marta, I'm not talking slowly. And that it might depend on rent for the space.
And when you say it might depend on rent, Jordan, can you expand on that a little bit? What do you mean?
It just came up at the very end, like right before we split, so that we didn't get to go into that too much.
So someone just said it might depend on rent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we could get more into that, and that was around the question of whether or not it would be appealing to a community member to utilize that space. It might depend on how expensive the space was.
Yes, and also maybe help them decide what size they'd like a larger size or just stall.
Got it. Thank you. Because we are already kind of running low on time and hitting our 7 o'clock mark, I'm going to go ahead and move on, but we'll have maybe an opportunity at the end to ask some general questions if people want to hang out and get some clarification afterwards. So that was the retail space. Smaller spaces, it sounded like cafecito, like juice, little things that you might want to go to. Residents might be interested in renting it. It kind of depends on the details, but there are people in the community who do that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and move on then to the kitchen space. So I think that might have been
me and
it's Manta. All right, Manta, do you mind sharing then what you guys talked about?
Yeah, definitely. Very similar to what Jordan and David talked about. We had a lot of questions around what this space would look like. If there would be stations, if there would be schedules around what businesses would be operating, what days, if it would alternate or if everybody would just have their own station, what those stations would look like, because everybody has different needs. They wanted to know what the storage capacity for the kitchens would look like, because there's a lot of utensils that go into baking. We also talked about rent, what rent would look like if there were multiple people using the same space. And then Marta brought up a little bit about what the business incubation would look like, if that is something that people would be interested in. We talked about who it would benefit, and it would benefit people like Patty, who has her own pastel business, and then also a lot of people who do sell food, but maybe a little bit more indirectly. Sorry, am I talking too fast?
I did it too. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I would, Manda, it sounds like you guys jumped right into some of like the details, which makes me think, or makes me assume that it sounds like people thought it was an interesting idea and they were able to immediately visualize it and get down to, okay, how would this really work? So it sounds like there wasn't a lot of thought that this was a bad idea, or was there kind of pushback of like, this may not be a good fit for Southwood?
No, I think we just, once we were talking about things that could be beneficial, nobody was negative about it, but they were wanted more clarification on the way things would look, and they also do realize that that would come with time, and it's a learning process. So sorry, Marta.
That was good. And then I'll go ahead and share out about the warehouse space conversation. We talked a little bit about this idea that bringing the warehouse space would also come with it, or bring with it jobs. And so we talked about what would that mean and would that be beneficial? And obviously, bringing jobs to Southwood has benefits. We identified that for people for whom transportation or travel would be difficult, that being able to work in the same place that you live could be really great. When we talked about what would make the job great, a lot of what we focused on was this idea that what the job's wages would be really important, that bringing a lot of jobs into the neighborhood, but if those jobs didn't allow for families to live comfortably, to be able to provide for their families, that those jobs were less beneficial than jobs, obviously, that would allow people to put food on the table and not be struggling. We talked a little bit about the operations of it. So the question was asked of who would own and operate this space. So Ross and John talked a little bit about how there would be sort of a company, almost like a property manager for an apartment complex, but there'd be a overarching company, and that within this big warehouse space, people would be able to rent, or companies would be able to rent smaller sections of the warehouse, and that big company would kind of oversee who rented what and what they paid, and keep operations going. And then we also talked about how, because we've talked in the past about there being a residential piece, apartments on this same block, that if we had this warehouse use, that the operations would need to fit with the residential character. So maybe limitations on when trucks could be coming in or going out to minimize noise or disturbances or light, or things like that, if there were, kids or families living around or near this warehouse space. And so wanting to be mindful of the mixture of uses was something that that we talked about. So that kind of covers, I think, the 3 different spaces. I want to just open it up a little bit and see if there's anybody who wants to ask a specific question or has a specific a thought that has come up since this discussion has started that they want to discuss with the group. Rose is raising her hand. Rose, do you want to go for it? You got to, here, I'll unmute you. I got you.
Okay.
You're unmuted.
You got me? I have a question or just a statement.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we were having a problem with, not so much a problem with the Mosby Mountain people across the street. How practical is it for us to rent out a warehouse space with additional traffic, with trucks, and with all that stuff going to be beneficial for us to keep our good relations with the people across the street? That's another key point to this, because they were very upset even about tearing out some of the woods. But if they know that big trucks are coming through there and it's going to be like a big warehouse, I'm afraid that the opposition to that project is going to be just too overwhelming for us to deal with.
I hear you. It sounds like a good recommendation from you, Rose, would be that we would include Mosby Mountain, and maybe we have Brian, if you remember, who is from Mosby Mountain, who's on our ARB, who's joined and who's on their HOA. So it might be a good idea to let him know some of these conversations and see what he thinks his HOA is going to feel about this. I think one thing that's potentially good is, depending on what we decide to do here. You talked about a lot of the opposition, and you're right, was about tearing out the trees and how visible or how much of a change to the look of Old Lynchburg Road was going to happen. And I think that this warehouse and retail space and whatnot could have less of a visual impact if it might not need to be as tall, depending on whether or not we talk about putting apartments on top of it. And so I think you're right. It's worth having a conversation earlier rather than later with our neighbors, so that we stay in good standing with them. I don't know if anyone from Blueprint has something they'd like to add about that idea that Rose has.
I'd say that's a great observation, Rose, and I think it is similar to an observation that Richard came up with, which is, the first two, the food hall and the commercial kitchen, are likely to have not a lot of traffic or noise or disruption, and the third may or may not, depending. Richard said, we've got children here, this is a residential community, I wouldn't want this to be open 24 hours, I wouldn't want trucks coming in, which is feedback well taken. I think that the most important reaction to Rose's good comment and Richard's good comment is design of both what goes in there and also constraints around what are hours opening and closing, what traffic is and isn't allowed to come, are questions that we want to ask Southwood residents and neighbors as soon as we can. So I think it's a great suggestion, both from Richard and Rose.
I would add something too, that whatever that is, whatever the agreement is, could be part of the land sale agreement. So it could actually be something that sort of becomes law on that property. It's called a deed restriction, and we certainly could work that out so that the neighborhood is protected and forever.
I would just add that I think there are certainly ways to provide the services that we hope that a distribution center would provide as part of this integrated food port, and do so with smaller trucks during windows of daylight windows of operation, so that there wouldn't be 18-wheelers coming in and out. They're going to be small panel delivery trucks, much like the small FedEx truck or Amazon truck that you see come and go. So that would certainly be manageable. And I think that would be the type or scale of operation that we would consider if we could do it.
Any other thoughts or questions about this proposal, or any other concerns that people have about it?
Rush, I heard a few questions that came up in some of the presentations, and I'm wondering if anybody at Blueprint could ask. So some of the things that came up in our group were things like, are there going to be different size stalls, businesses available, and do you have any, I know it's really early, but do you have any sense of cost? What would it cost to rent? Is it the kind of thing that could incubate businesses where people can get in at one price, and as their business grows, cost more? Do you have any comparable prices for what it costs to rent like this, the spaces in Richmond?
Yeah, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but the vision would be, so, the two closest to Charlottesville examples are Hatch in Richmond, and then Union Market in DC, right near the Union Station train station. Union Market has a food incubator where if you're just a person who runs a business out of your home, there's a very small price to rent a commercial kitchen. And same thing in Hatch. And then if you want your own fixed space, let's say you employ 3 or 4 people, that costs more. And then Union Market, the Richmond group, Hatch, does not have a public facing food hall, but Union Market in Richmond has both large floor plan where there are established restaurants or businesses that want to expand. That could be very, let's say, a coffee shop or cafe in another part of Charlottesville wanted another location. That would be probably larger floor plate, but they also have pop-up stalls where you can pay a small amount of money and have a stall for a month and see how your business goes and see if you want to pay for other months. So I think the numbers are something we'd need to get back to you on, and would love to have that conversation. But I think the ambition is whether you're just one person running a business by yourself with not a lot of money, or whether you want a larger established stall, we would have a flexible range of options to help you hopefully start and then grow your footprint and grow your business as you had more success.
Thanks. And then the other question that I heard a lot was about what kind of jobs and wages. So John, have you, in conversations with folks in the local food hub, do you know what kinds of jobs would be available at the warehouse, and do you have any idea of the sort of range of pay scale?
Dan, we did talk about that in the warehouse breakout session, and we profiled a few of the jobs that we envisioned. So think of the warehouse, for example, as just it's the distribution center between the farm and the consumer. And so food, envision small trucks, pickup trucks coming up from the farms, bringing their produce in. It comes into the warehouse. It will be unpacked, cleaned, processed, packaged, stored, then sorted and boxed. And then, some will go to the store that is adjacent. Some will go on small panel trucks that will then deliver it out to, whether it's University of Virginia or James Madison University or other businesses, and in many cases to individual homes. So the types of jobs would be all the way from, essentially just what I would say would probably be some of the lower labor jobs or of moving and logistics, to a higher paying job that could be a butcher or a butcher's apprentice, or a truck driver or a delivery person. So there'll be those types of jobs that will come out of this, as well as food prep. So there is a demand for prepared foods now. So some of that food will be processed perhaps in the commercial kitchen, packaged, and you'll have pre-prepared meals. And so there could be a need for culinary talent to help prepare the food as well. So I think of the whole range of jobs within a food ecosystem.
Kids in K-Tech love that.
Sharika, did you think that K-Tech would be a good partner for that?
Yes, because he's next door. Culinary arts. Yeah, culinary arts kids will love that because they make so many things, and some of them are really good. We're nice because it's culinary. Baking. Yeah, baking. So then that would be good. Okay.
And those are the types of things that we hope will happen. And I think when you think about the design of the space, as Ross said, they're going to be entry-level points. So we want to create space that will enable people who have an idea to come and try it and use that as a starting point. And if they start to get some traction, then they maybe can commit to a larger kiosk and actually start to market whatever it is they make there in the store, or make it and put it on a food truck, or make it there and take it somewhere else. But the whole idea is to bring all the things about food together in one place, from its processing to its preparation to its distribution and consumption. And it's not a brand new idea. It's something that's been done, as Ross said, and quite effectively all over the country. In Union Square, Union Cafe, and in DC, there are these in New York, and Richmond's starting to get one with Hatch. And we're quite excited about Southwood because there's a large community there. We think many of whom would like to take advantage of this opportunity, and there is a market there that creates a demand for what's being produced. So it just seems to be an ideal location.
Yeah, Rose.
I just have a question. So if this goes forward, will they get back to us before this is all said and done, with maybe some kind of design for the building to make sure it's in alignment with what we want and cohesive with the community?
Definitely, Rose, that's a good segue into kind of what's next steps. I can try to summarize, but I also will happily welcome Ross or Dan or John or Megan stepping in and correcting me if I misquote what we're thinking. But this was, like Ross said at the beginning, kind of the start of the conversation to just see, did this have any traction? Were you guys interested in it? Did it sound like a fit for the neighborhood? What Ross and his team want to do is go back and put some more details into this, kind of try to start to look at some of the things that you guys might be asking about, so that they can start seeing if we can find investors who are interested in helping fund this project. don't laugh, Rose, to make this happen. And there are investors who are excited about this kind of idea. So I think they're bringing this to us not just because it's a fun idea that they had, but because it's an idea that there's excitement and interest about in the community and among people who could make it happen. So the idea is to put together a package for us to get to a place of saying, yeah, this is something we would like to pursue, so that they can then go and find out if there are investors who want to fund it. And then, like you're saying, get into maybe some of the detail and the design of it. And obviously with our internal ARB, they, like any other partner or builder, would need to come through and get approval. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a stretch from Joe. Was Marta giving me a stretch or just Joe? Marta's fine, Joe. That would have to go through the same vetting process that any of the buildings in this first phase have to get approval from our ARB, to make sure, like you said, it's cohesive with the neighborhood. Ross, Dan, John, Megan, what did I get wrong?
I think, Rush, that's very accurate. I think, though, just to be a little bit more specific about what would be most helpful for us, if everyone on this call could not only talk to your families, but your community who are not here, and give us a list of the types of shops, the types of goods, the types of, if you were to go in that store, what would you like to see? Fresh produce, meat, finished goods. What are the types of things that you think would be of interest to the community of Southwood? And that will help us determine what type of folks to talk to. We've been, as Ross mentioned, we've been talking to folks in the food business for about 5 years now. We know that this is an idea that is receiving great attention from the farmers, and from some of the finished good producers. We want to make sure we put the right people and the right design in there. So knowing what you all want will help us to, determine how to configure the space and what types of vendors to put in the store.
Wanda says everything. She put up a sign. That's great, John. I think either we could actually do some polling around that and do some talking between now and the next meeting individually with folks about and get a real sense of what it is that people want to see. That's great direction.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add is that, I think there's both a short timeline and a longer timeline. The short timeline is really kind of decide whether the thing as an idea or as a concept will go forward, because John and Ross and Megan and the whole team over there have a lot of work to do in the next couple of months to see if it can go forward. If it's going to go forward, then there's a good long time to have a lot of interaction with you all and other members of the community to really specify what exactly wants to go there, what kinds of good, what kind of spaces, etc. What happens in the warehouse. But the really important thing I think now is to sort of get something that feels like consensus that yes, this is an idea that's worth exploring. And it's hard because everybody's on my little computer screen here, but I get a general sense that there's some general support for this concept. So people can nod yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. Wanda, that's a yes, no. Okay, that's a yes, all right.
It's good that no one's left.
That's right.
I just have a question.
Sure, Rose.
Okay, so I know we have to wait for Piedmont, right? Or either we override them and say, no, we don't want you, we want this more. Is that correct? Or am I missing something?
I wouldn't I wouldn't characterize it as wanting someone more or less.
But you know,
but yeah,
I'm sorry.
we have the option within the agreement that we have with the county
Right.
to propose something different other than the apartments that we were looking at doing with PHA. That's correct.
Okay, but it's also in the agreement that we are committed to do a lot more housing. So where would they go? Somewhere else in the neighborhood, or would we find another spot? That's question one, because we are committed to those housing for people. And secondly, if it does come through and that people want PMOD housing, is there another spot within, maybe not Village 1, but maybe Village 2 or 3 for this project?
Gotcha. So the first question, the way that the agreement is with the county, you're right. We have said that we want to try to produce 80 affordable apartments in this first phase. That is one of the requirements, or one of the things that we said in that agreement. If we can't produce them, there is a potential, the way the contract is written, we would not be able to draw down all of the money that we have in the contract, but it's a small portion of the money. We made it a separate piece of the funding specifically because we always knew getting financing to do the affordable apartments was competitive and was not guaranteed. And so we didn't want all of the funding to either come or not come depending on this one piece. So there is the potential that we could lose a small amount of funding from the county if we cannot produce these 80 units. But that is something that we could make up in other ways through land sales. So it's something that if we can't provide them, it's not a loss overall to the project. We could get around that.
And I would add a little something to that there's also wording in the contract that if something else comes around that's of greater benefit to the community, we just have to ask the supervisors, whether they're on board with that. And they don't get a chance to say, no, you can't do it. They just would say, then that little piece of funding wouldn't come to you. So that's another reason why it's kind of important to sort of understand what the will of the community is, because if there are a lot of people who say, no, we really like this idea of a food court and a kitchen and a warehouse, even more than LIHTC, then that's good to know for us to go back to the county and tell them. But from my perspective, the very most important thing is to get the right thing on that site. And so if the right thing, according to the greater community good, is this rather than LIHTC, well, then we'll try to roll in that direction. If the right thing, if everybody on this call said, no, we really want the apartments completely, not this, then that's something different. And so that's what we're trying to kind of figure out.
And then Rose, the second part of your question was, would there be space for something like this in future phases? It sounded like you said
no.
village.
If we don't, if it doesn't come this time around, if we just decide if people wanted the apartments more than they wanted this, is there another part in this phase, not maybe Village 1, but 2 or 3, where we could have something like this?
I think are you talking about the this and that is the retail and then the warehouse? I think that would be tricky to do elsewhere in this first phase, mostly because you guys have identified the right place for like a retail or a shop, something that would be good and draw not just the Southwood community, but draw potentially the outside community in. We've identified that is best suited to the entrance so that traffic and that impact doesn't go further into the community. That's something we heard, and that's why we identified this neighborhood center where it is on the outside. So I don't know that in phase 1 there's a good space for a retail or a warehouse that might bring trucks and things like that further into the neighborhood. And I think I'm reflecting what what we've talked about as a neighborhood not wanting that further in. Now in phase 2, and remember there's this whole other part of Southwood that is yet to be rezoned and designed. It could be that in phase 2, there's more of this kind of downtown center created, just as, you know, if you think about that first intersection with Hickory Street and Bitternut, that we're starting with this one little piece here at the entrance. If it works really well, it could grow into more of a downtown. So there is space in future phases to do more of this kind of thing. In phase 1, to do something that might be like this, that might have cafes and those kinds of things. This neighborhood center at the entrance is what we've identified as the best place for that to be, based on you guys designing that. Does that ring true to you, Rose?
Yeah. Okay. I just I was just wondering if it's
a good
somewhere
question.
in future phases that could be done, but
mm-hmm.
I understand the ramifications of trying to move it in versus having it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a timing issue too, in that that there's a group of people who are looking to do this thing now, and if we said to them, look, has to wait till phase 2, 3-4 years from now, I'm not sure that they wouldn't have found another location by then. But maybe I'm wrong about that, Ross. What do you think, Ross?
I mean, 2 observations. I think one, and we've had conversations with Sunshine about this. I don't know that the whether it's PHA or another direction, I don't know that the housing and the food court are mutually exclusive. I think Richard had some good observations around if for example, there are other in Denver, for instance, there's a very similar commercial kitchen and food hall that has residences on floor 2, 3, and 4. I don't know that a 24-hour warehouse with residences on top would be great. So there would have to be important noise restrictions and ideas if we were to put housing and food on the same lot. So Rose, both could happen on the same property depending on how we build it. And B, I mean, I do think that the site of Block 12 close to Old Lynchburg Road is the best site for a number of reasons for this particular idea. We could certainly consider in other places if this doesn't work out, but I think after looking at it, our preference is that this Block 12 is the best site for a number of reasons. But that, I think trying to be conscious of everyone's time and play back what we've heard. I think we've heard a lot of people are interested. There are some very good questions and concerns, but being close to jobs and a nice place to be and a really good community center is good. There are questions of what types of jobs, how much people are getting paid, who the employers are that we need to think about. And then we need to come up with a couple of different floor plans, designs of what this could look like. And Rose, some of those may include housing, some of those may not. So I think it's really the responsibility is on us to take and hear that feedback and maybe come back to you soon with a much more refined idea based off of this really great feedback. So
okay,
I might try and answer questions and play back what I'm hearing there.
Yeah, and I think if I could just add in response to Dan's question, having to wait a couple more years, might change the character. I mean, it would not disqualify some type of food-related initiative, but we do have tenants that are looking for space in the short run. So
okay,
they would like to have something in the next 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay.
And if we have to go beyond that, then we'll have to do something for them, and then that it narrows the subset of things that could come into Southwood. Is that fair, Ross?
Completely.
Well, I think Ross did a pretty good job of summarizing there. And given that we have already blown our promise of a 1 hour meeting by half an hour.
That's good news. There's interest.
It's half an hour shorter than we're used to, but we've been trying to limit ourselves given our new virtual world. So we're used to spending 2 hours together. So we're doing pretty good, 2.5 sometimes. So I think what it sounds like is we got a lot of really good feedback. There's interest. It's something worth pursuing. We need some more detail. And so that's some work for us to do, the Blueprint group and Habitat, and then report back to you guys soon. And what we can also do in the meantime, or maybe at our next meeting, is some more specific polling and questions about what types of spaces or uses, Wanda says everything, that you guys might like to see in the neighborhood center. So unless anybody is feeling like they're dying to say something that didn't get said, or feels like they have.
I'm trying to say something.
Ooh, Joanne, tell me.
I put it like this. We have all the older people out here who have done work all their lives. And, I don't think they should be cut out of things. I mean, you got other people's getting houses. Are you going to cut their houses away from them? They can afford to work and get jobs and all. We're up in age. We can't afford to get jobs. Yes. And the jobs that we did have, we didn't make the money back then like they make today. So, I mean, why is, I just can't understand why departments always want to get cut out. I just don't understand it.
Well,
I mean, we can't afford the houses. We can't afford the condos and stuff.
Right. And so you want to make sure that we don't lose sight of having those really affordable rentals for folks who maybe are on fixed incomes and have what they have.
That's right.
And we need to make sure it works for them too.
Yes, I do.
That's right. And Joanne, I want to make sure you know that we're talking right now about the development that's up by the entrance. And
right.
A lot of what we're doing in that first neighborhood that you helped us design, like those apartments that we're designing down there, nothing about that has changed. So the idea that those could have some of those really affordable rentals mixed in with the neighborhood, with the rest of the housing, nothing about that has shifted. This is really focused on that neighborhood center up at the entrance.
Well, like I said, I'm just trying to look out for the older people.
It's a great note. I appreciate that, Joanne. We cannot forget about that. And Wanda's holding up another sign. It says, incubators for Southwood residents need to be promised. What do you mean by that, Wanda? Unmute yourself and tell me what you mean.
Being that everything that is happening now as coronavirus, people don't have jobs. So for them to start all over and have to pay something like somewhat price, like high, it's going to be a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of people that's going to back out and not have this and has been waiting for so many years and won't be able to afford it.
And are you talking mostly about the Block 12 incubators, that if those are supposed to support small businesses and you want it to support Southwood small businesses, your concern is that that is going to mean that the rents have to be low to no cost so that that entry is available so that people can get in and get their footing.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I hear that.
Very good idea.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Wanda. Anybody else? Marta is exhausted now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Really hope to meet you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Be well, everyone. Be safe.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios.